Hello and welcome back to another episode of RP-1. Today we are going to take on a huge challenge and try to accomplish 3 contracts in a single launch. We are going to be doing a solar satellite, a scientific satellite, and we're going to put it in a polar orbit. If we could have done this on our first launch, we would have been able to accomplish all 4 of the initial contracts for the program. But alas, we launched horizontally. We didn't grab the polar contract. Honestly, I didn't think my rocket was going to be able to handle it, but after seeing the successful orbit of the first one, I wanted to work on something else. But as you see here, we are now in the age of the Dawnbreaker. We are no longer going to be using the gold wing. We're still going to have the gold and white design scheme, but the gold wing rocket with the A9 engine is no longer going to be in use. So let's introduce you to the Dawnbreaker 1A. It's called the 1A because between the time that I created it and the time that it will roll out for the launch, the solid rocket boosters on the side will go through an upgrade and be a little bit stronger. So it's a slight change before it even gets rolled out onto the launch pad, so that's nice. But anyways, this rocket boasts over 10,000 meters per second of delta V. It is a 4-stage rocket capable of orbit both polar and regular at over 350 kilometer periapsis. So this should be more than enough to handle our contract. Possibly not more than enough, possibly just barely enough, but we'll see. As you see here, I'm using some caster 1s for the solid rocket boosters. I'm not sure why I didn't click on the main engine, but we are using the RD-108, and that is going to be the basis of the Dawnbreaker family of rockets. I'm very happy with the amount of upgrades it has, so we're going to be using that for quite a while. This is the AJ-10 early series, and these are some snub separatrons. We have some nitrogen-based RCS on here to maintain control once the separation of the lower and middle stages. We have some spin motors to give us some spin stabilization. And then up here, underneath this top fairing, we have the final stages that will bring us to orbit. This 11 times cluster of baby sergeants upgraded to the second version. Both of them upgraded to the second version. And then some spin motors to once again spin stabilize it. And then here's the payload, which is a scientific satellite filled with a bunch of batteries, and as you can see here, solar panels in a triple form in the center, and then one on the top and the bottom. So no matter which way this satellite is pointing, hopefully it will be getting some sun. I had some spotlights on there when this was only meant to satisfy when this wasn't going to satisfy the polar contract, because in that case we would have wanted to launch in the dark, so that way we could spend the most of our time in the sunlight. But since we're going for a polar orbit, that doesn't really matter. So now I gotta make sure that my staging is correct. With a rocket like this, there's a lot going on here, and I want to make sure that everything is perfect, because we don't want to fail our mission simply because, the wrong section staged. As you see here, we still need 1959 to 1960 solid rocket engines, and that's because the casters, that's where that upgrade came from, the 1A, that's their second, but we are going to build it without that upgrade, so that way we can just start getting it onto the launch pad. It's a bit to tool it. This was a rocket that we built from scratch, but it's all worthwhile because we are going to be using many of these same sizes and many of these engines and the avionics and all that stuff, so it's worth tooling. So let's go ahead and leave and get this rocket into the queue. As you see, we put 2 of them in there. This is time warped a little ahead. We already unlocked the 1950s, 1960s, 1959, 1960s solid rocket boosters, and so now these are the complete versions of the Dawnbreaker here. We are going to we're going to hire a bunch of engineers for this. I really want this rocket to come out as soon as possible. I'm very excited for this mission, and we have some plane missions that we could be working on right now, but I just want to push this 3-in-1 launch as close as possible. Besides, our pilots could use a little bit of a break. They've been flying quite well. So now here I'm going to go into the tracking station to give myself the ideal launch time. I want to be able to spend as much time in the sun as possible. And lo and behold, wouldn't you know it, we are actually within perfect parameters. We are just lined up exactly through the middle of the daytime, so that's where our orbit will hold for the most part. So let's go ahead and launch this thing. I am excited. I hope you are too. So with a quick hit of the spacebar, our engine spools up pretty quickly, and the all 4 SRBs launch or ignite nominally. So we're just going to go ahead and head up. The SRBs are necessary because without them, the thrust to weight ratio is about 90 or 0.98. So it takes a while before it can even get up to an over 1.0 TWR. So having these heavy-duty solid rocket boosters was a huge benefit for us. In many of my test flights, I realized that it wasn't good to pitch over any sooner than 200 meters per second because it was hard to pitch over, and the rocket spent more time fighting that, and the SRBs had more likely of a chance to collide with the rocket itself. So there were many parts of this that I test drove, and this is the culmination of many hours of just flying this over and over, trying to find the ideal balance. So we're using Smart ASS to pilot the rocket. I still haven't quite gotten the hang of MechJeb. I've been watching tutorials and stuff, but for some reason it's just not clicking with me yet. I haven't quite fully grasped it. So we're going to be flying this manually, or mostly manually, using Smart ASS to control our pitch and control our heading. We are, of course, heading north because this is a polar orbit. And I'm pitching over 5 degrees at a time. I know a lot of people say just click it once every 15 meters per second or 20 meters per second or whatever. I've heard multiple different things, but I click it over 5 at a time. I feel like for the most part, every rocket that I've built has been able to handle it. So. And I want to try to get to about 45 degrees by the time I hit 45 kilometers. And when I hit 40 kilometers, we're going to go ahead and stage the fairings to lessen some of the weight. And then we're just going to hold this heading for quite a while until we reach our desired apoapsis. At 275 kilometers, we're going to pitch it over because that will bring us to the 300 kilometers that we need for the scientific satellite. Scientific satellite requires a certain periapsis. The polar orbit requires a certain periapsis as well, but it's a little more forgiving. It's just between 200 and 400 or 600 or something like that, whereas the scientific satellite requires to be over 300. And the solar satellite, I believe that just requires over 160 or something like that. So pretty simple. But if we want to satisfy all 3 contracts at once, we need to make sure we take in all the parameters. Alright, so as you see here, 270 kilometers up, and then once we hit 275, we're going to pitch over to the horizon, 3 degrees above 0, and then we start our roll. And we are going to roll until the end of this stage, so that way we can get a nice spin stabilization The next stage does have avionics to control it, but the better we can just get our spin and point ourselves at the horizon, the better off we'll be. So now, I did a lot of testing, and what eventually helped was I posed a question on Reddit to the real solar system people, and I found out better than dividing the burn in half by the time, we're going to divide it in half by the delta V. So that means that this 2 minute long burn that we're about to do with the AJ-10 is going to start roughly 2 minutes from the maneuver node, because that's half of our delta V, and then the two baby sergeants in front is the equivalent amount of delta V, so that's where we're going to split it. And I'm not rolling it there. For some reason it just decides to roll itself the opposite way after some time. So alright, so then we kick off that, and then it's time for our last two SRBs. And before you know it, our camera spins around and we are in orbit. We are above 300 periapsis. We fire our final stage, which is some spin motors pointed the opposite way of our spin to kind of cancel out a lot of our movement. It still spins it a little bit, but look, it's a lot slower. Which means our solar panels have a much better time getting exposure to the sunlight. So there we go. We completed our first polar orbit satellite. Now we're just waiting for the scientific satellite to do 24 hours worth of data and transmit it. And then the solar satellite will be going for about 14 days. So that's going to take much longer, but we're not gonna show that now. We're going to let that just do its thing during the time while we're flying missions and doing X-plane stuff and getting ourselves ready for the next episodes. But we do complete it. All three of those contracts will be completed successfully within that singular satellite. And so I'm very excited. I was very happy with this. If only we could have held off our first orbit until we could design this craft, then we could have done all four contracts of the early light satellite program all at once. It is possible. It is doable, as you see here. It's very hard, but if you have the right technology, if you've aggressively spent your tech well and did a lot for science, so you have science to spend, it is definitely doable. That being said, I would love to see somebody achieve this 3-in-1 or 4-in-1 actually contract launch using the crudest technology possible, and see what you could get away with bare minimum doing. As you see here, we still have the solar panel or the solar contract, so until that's done, we can't complete the program, but we still have a year left to do it, and we only need 14 days for it to shake out, so that will be good, and we'll be doing that soon. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more RP-1. If you did, please consider giving me a like, drop me a comment, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.